Hi guys, this is Kezia and you are watching Water Nerds. So happy today to have Dr. Eric Roy with me and also to have Analies back with us, our policy nerd. So today we're going to discuss something that you've probably said before. Safe drinking water, like clean drinking water, healthy drinking water. What does that mean? You know, we have EPA regulation, we have Clean Water Act, we have Safe Drinking Water Act. It's lots of different federal and kind of government things that may attempt to define what clean or safe or healthy water is. But I think we can get down to the nitty gritty, like really find out what that actually means. And so I have the two best people in America to...
You're too kind.
I mean... No, but I have two amazing people here to talk about that and to break it down to make it make sense. All right. So social media is a necessary type of media. I'm going to say it that way. And, you know, with Hydroviv being on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram and on YouTube, you know, we get some interesting comments. One kind of batch of comments that we get that I find very interesting is usually from our beloved baby boomer generation, who mentioned how we talk about lead in water and how certain municipalities and school districts are trying to get lead out of water in the schools. And I've seen so many comments that say something like, oh, well, I'm sure we had lead in our water back in my day when I was growing up in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and we turned out fine. So these kids and school boards and school districts should quit whining. These kids are going to be fine. It's still pretty safe to say, though, that everyone should have drinking water that isn't going to cause them harm. And I think with things that have happened with Flint, things that have happened with other areas in North Carolina with Gen X, anywhere in the country with lead, we kind of get into that safe drinking water for everyone, clean drinking water for everyone, healthy drinking water for everyone without actually defining what that actually means. Do you mean just potable, or do you mean like actually clean or healthy or safe? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So Analies, what does safe drinking water mean?
So it's actually a regulatory definition, and it means that your water is in compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act, which was first enacted in 1974. So a kind of a decades-old law. It means safe means you're in compliance with that law, and that's all it means.
Wait. Okay, so like what is the safe drinking water, what does that law like state? Like what is it?
So it pretty much has a list of like 90 contaminants, and it has maximum contaminant levels or allowable levels for those contaminants. And if your water is within the threshold of all of those contaminants, it's safe. But the Safe Drinking Water Act doesn't include emerging contaminants and new contaminants that...
Right, that's what I was just about to ask. So it doesn't, like something like PFAS wouldn't be on that list?
Right. So a water system can be in compliance, safe, and still have PFAS. So that's something that not a lot of people realize. They think, my municipality released this consumer confidence report. First paragraph, you have safe water. It's only talking about a handful of contaminants.
Go ahead.
If I can jump in here, I think it's important to realize that the words mean different things to different people. So a municipality, as Analies said, you know, they say it's safe if the water is compliant with the Safe Drinking Water Act. We get a lot of questions coming in on chat and email that are just like, is my water safe? And I think that it's important to kind of understand that perhaps what the person who's asking the question means by safe is often different than what the municipality says, because exactly what you're saying, it's like, yeah, of course our water is safe, it's compliant with every single thing in EPA's laws, but I don't think the consumer really understands that there are giant holes in that regulation. And I think that when when the World Health Organization, some of these global organizations look at the word safe, it's more in terms of like, can you drink the water? Like they're asking the question, if you drink the water, does it make you sick immediately?
Right. More biological.
And it's more of a biological thing. And fortunately, because we are in the United States, we do have,
some privileges.
Right, exactly. So if you're on municipal water, barring a water main break or something like that, by that definition, your water is safe. You're not going to drink it and then get like waterborne illness.
Right.
If the water is compliant with the pretty loose Safe Drinking Water Act regulations, then your municipality says, okay, it's safe as far as we're concerned. But I think there's a growing interest in the U.S. to make sure that it's not just safe by legal definition, safe by do I get immediately sick definition, but it's more over time, do the contaminants in my water make me more susceptible to things like cancer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's more of like breaking apart the word safe into legal, acute, and then kind of long-term risks. And I think that's worth pointing out. It's like, if even in the depths of the Flint water crisis, if someone were to take a cup of that water and drink it on an isolated incident once,
nothing would happen.
It's not like they're going to get sick that day, right? But it's over time consuming levels of lead. We know that this has impacts on children. The same thing's true for chromium-6, for arsenic. And really, I think when people are taking steps to like do research and then they're finding all this information, then it's like they come in and they become overwhelmed with the information. And they're just like, is the water safe? Yes or no?
They just want a yes.
They just want a yes or no, and it's a lot more complicated than that. So what we're trying to do, hopefully, is kind of shine a little bit of light on like the different definitions, what they actually mean, and then it's like it's unfortunately it's complicated, right? There's no like red light, green light that you can do for water quality. It's a complicated thing. So I think it's important just to kind of set the stage there. And we're gonna, as we discuss this, I think we should really try and make sure that we're using, legally safe. Does it comply with drinking water standards? Is it safe biologically? I think we can probably assume pretty much everything we're going to talk about today, yes. So really, if we're talking about long-term exposure, I think we should just kind of be accurate and precise in our language.
Absolutely.
So we agree that we're going to try to do that? All right, cool. So
yeah, and I think one thing that people are looking for more nowadays are like simple answers, like yes or no, because it feels like kind of everything is kind of complicating. It's complicated in some sort of way. So when it comes to something that people believe that municipalities are responsible for providing healthy, safe, clean, and that's what a lot of people rely on. It's just that, well, I believe I pay my taxes, so I'm sure that our water authority or public works are doing exactly what they're supposed to do to make sure the water that we're drinking is safe, healthy, clean. And according to EPA's, the Safe Drinking Water Act, they're in compliance. But
well, I think you bring up a really good point about the words. We said safe, and we said that there's quite a bit of complexity with that. Then there's healthy and clean.
Right.
Those words don't mean anything at all, like nothing.
Right.
I mean, what is clean? What does that mean? Like if you take a bath, are you clean? If you what does that even mean?
And we have different definitions of hygiene anyway. So
exactly. So it's one of those things that doesn't actually mean anything. So I think we need to really, particularly the experts in the field, need to be being very precise with language and not use sweeping, marketing speak, just so people really do understand, because it's not fair to the consumer on social media to be like, oh, well, our water's not clean because this meme says so, right? It's like, well, what does that actually mean? So,
what does that mean?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
So I think a good segue is to kind of talk about like the legal jargon and kind of the words that are used that maybe would sway people in a different direction. So like you said something about enforceable and like non-enforceable limits.
Yeah, so this is kind of continuing to break down the language and legal terms. So
are we talking about legal safe right now?
Let's talk about legal safe.
Okay, that's our header.
Yeah.
Enforceable limits.
Okay.
So there's a lot of, we'll get to the non-enforceable, but the two legal limits are maximum contaminant levels.
That's the MCL,
That
right?
is MCL, and action levels. That's it. So when you are reading a consumer confidence report, those are the only two legal, your municipality must comply with those two levels.
Got you. So the maximum contaminant level is the most they can, the most you could, like the limit before you're out of compliance.
The allowable limit that a municipality can, let the contamination
and still be
through.
in compliance.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And so action level would be, I guess, above the MCL.
So that's just specific to lead
And copper.
And copper.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Oh wait.
Yes.
So that's only specific to lead and copper. So that does not include like arsenic or chromium-6
No,
or.
so action level, it was, I don't know why they did this, but under the lead and copper rule, they created an action level as opposed to an MCL. And it's a 90th percentile. I'll let you go into
So
that.
Yeah.
okay.
So action level had to be created because lead doesn't come from the water supply, right? It comes from the pipes.
Right.
So if you live in a home with lead pipes, you have your water is more susceptible to lead contamination than if you don't. So it wouldn't be right to set a citywide, you can't really have a single limit because it's like, well, we know the water entering the system has no lead in it.
Right.
It picks up lead along the way. So what they did with the action level is they said, okay, for lead and copper, what we want to do is we want to sample the city. We'll collect 50, 100, 200 samples across the city and then analyze them for lead and copper. And if the concentration of, it's called the 90th percentile concentration, basically it says if 10% of the taps that are sampled are over the, quote, action level, then there are steps that need to be taken. That's the legally enforceable level. And they had to create a definition just because none of the other contaminants come from the pipes.
Yeah.
So like everything else, they can just sample at the source and you're good to go, or at least as it's entering the system, and you're good to go. So that's kind of that's the backstory. So we've unintentionally already added a layer of complexity on top of it.
Yeah,
so let's just kind of walk it back and talk about I think something that's really important to talk about with MCLs is those are negotiated. So it's not like doctors determine that there's a magic concentration that if you're at, if the MCL like for arsenic is 10 parts per billion, it doesn't mean 9.9 is like, oh, you're good, and then 10.1 is, oh, that's bad. It's those are negotiated limits.
And typically it takes a long time to negotiate those limits. So once they're set, they're really not going to go anywhere because they're trying to regulate, EPA is trying to regulate so many other contaminants.
Right.
They're prioritizing the new ones rather than the ones that have MCLs, regardless of new scientific information that's coming forward.
So who negotiates those limits? Is it states with the EPA?
Stakeholders.
Yeah.
So that can be municipalities. Sometimes there's toxicologists or scientists or doctors in the room.
And they do this like
politicians.
Federally, they do this like federally, or do they do this per state?
So you have federal MCLs and state MCLs. So federal MCLs, you have a whole bunch of stakeholders from all over.
Right.
State MCLs are a little different.
Might be a senator or congressman.
Yeah, it might
maybe
be like
a state lab or something
officials.
in there.
Yeah. But
Well,
states
and again, municipalities, right? Like, they don't want to go to their tax base and say,
we're going to have to raise taxes.
we have to raise your taxes because your water is now unsafe. Like, if you look at arsenic, right? Like, if you were to take the MCL of arsenic from 10, which is what the negotiated limit was, down to 1 or 3, which is what a lot of scientists are arguing for, a lot of water in the country instantly goes from, quote, safe to unsafe overnight, even though nothing happened.
Yeah.
So in that case, if you're a municipality and you're kind of in like that 7, 8, 9 part per billion range for arsenic, like Tucson and Reno and places like that, like you don't want to go to your tax base and say, hey guys, we got to, we're going to jack up your taxes to make the water, quote,
fix the
safe.
water.
And the residents are like, right, but nothing happened. Why is that changed? So, I look at this, I don't know where you stand on this, Analies or Kezia, but it's at some point you got to set a limit, right? And those are negotiated. That's the reality of the situation. They're negotiated, and people can kind of What we're trying to do here is just kind of say there's more nuance and there's more that goes into it than just like we're good to go,
We're good.
red light, green light.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because we see a lot of confusion on chat when people call in, stuff like that, because they get a notice saying, oh, our water's not safe. It's like, well, let's go through it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we've talked about maximum contaminant levels, and those are the enforceable.
Yep.
All right. So we have action levels, and those only apply to lead and copper.
Yes.
Correct.
All right. So I hear about health advisory goals and public health goals. Are those the same thing?
Yeah, so there's a whole non-enforceable
So
set
there's
of...
okay. So there's an
We
enforceable
had
slide.
enforceable, which
Yes.
is MCL action level.
Now
And then we
we're
got
we're talking about
non-enforceable.
another thing.
Okay.
So some common terms that people see on consumer confidence reports or just researching their water quality, lifetime health advisory goals, maximum contaminant level goals, which are different than maximum contaminant levels.
MCL versus MCLG.
Yes, definitely. Public health goals, things like that. And those are all non-enforceable. Municipalities are not required to comply with them at all. So that's important to differentiate the two sets of levels.
And then when you go to EPA's website, it's even more confusing, right?
Yeah.
Because you have the MCL, which is that's the enforceable limit. Then there's the MCLG,
Right.
Which is the
their
goal.
definition, I don't want to butcher their language, but I'm just kind of going from memory. And basically what it says is, this is the concentration known to cause no adverse effects.
Right.
So it's basically for all these contaminants, the MCLG is always like 0,
Yeah.
but the MCL is a lot higher
Right.
because it's a negotiated limit, right?
So yeah, arsenic is a good example of that. It's kind of EPA acknowledging we would love to have it be 0 because the MCLG for arsenic is 0.
Arsenic's super toxic.
Right. They're saying we would love to have it be 0, but almost every municipality or most municipalities in the country would be out of compliance. And that's, an expensive treatment. There's just a lot that goes into reducing that maximum contaminant level.
At the municipal level.
At the municipal level.
Right. And most water doesn't go in our mouth, right? It just goes down a drain or
Yeah.
down a toilet. So it'd be spending a lot of money. And even in the case of arsenic, in the consumer confidence reports, right, they have boilerplate language that says for like those municipalities that have some level of arsenic, and it says something along the lines of your water has levels of arsenic, measurable levels of arsenic. Arsenic, if consumed over time, can blah, 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 blah. It's compliant, but EPA balances the risks with the cost to remediate it at the municipal level. So it's kind of one of those sentences that's like crammed somewhere on page 43 of the CCR where it says, look, we'd love for it to be better, but this is kind of the deal, and this is our disclosure telling you, if you're concerned,
Right.
do something about it. And it's like, well, I think most people are usually a little bit weirded out when they read that.
So why is it called a lifetime health advisory level? Like, instead of like in your 30s, the health, why is it like a lifetime?
So this is just adding another level of complexity, but
Awesome.
in risk assessment, you basically need a value to put into the equation.
So they
that
threw
says-
lifetime at the
Exactly.
beginning of it.
Yep.
Okay, so.
Right. Clear as mud, right?
Right, absolutely. So lifetime health advisory level and public health goals, that's the same thing.
Yeah. Same sort of non-enforceable, not required to comply, that whole thing.
So, pardon me if this sounds a little silly, but if
Why do they exist? I don't know.
you took the words right out of my mouth, like what, they're not enforceable.
Yeah.
There's no level, you can't be in or out of compliance with them. Why are they there?
I think, for one, it's EPA acknowledging that it's on their radar, and they're kind of giving, people an option to say, this is what we think it should be. We can't create an MCL just yet. We still have scientific research to do. We have to figure out a way for municipalities, an affordable way for municipalities to detect it and comply with the new MCL. So I think those are just two
So can
reasons.
can like municipalities or states set their own standards?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can set their own standards for regulated contaminants, so the 9D that are already regulated, and then any unregulated contaminant as well. But that takes a lot of money and resources, and
Right.
they're holding their municipalities accountable for meeting those. So
And that's hard.
It's
That's hard.
Yeah.
It's expensive, and again, no one wants to go back to their tax base and say, "Hey, we're jacking up your taxes." It doesn't
Right.
matter what side of the aisle you're
Yeah.
on. That's an unpalatable situation. I want to just kind of one other thing with like why do they even exist? I think it's building on what Analies is talking about. It's a good thing that EPA is at least acknowledging that it's like, look, like it's about risk. We're not, there's no such thing as red light, green light, like thumbs up, thumbs down.
Right.
It's about risk. So different people have different tolerances for risk. Like some people smoke, there's a risk associated with that. Some people drink alcohol, there's risk associated with that. And people have different standards for that. So it's at least EPA saying, look, this is what the data say. We know this is a safe level, but there's a higher level that we're going to enforce because you got to pick a number somewhere. Where I get frustrated personally as someone who talks a lot with people and who are asking a lot of questions is when they see EPA's website that says this is the MCLG, so the goal, this is the level we know causes no harm, but then their municipality goes on the local news saying our water is safe, absolutely safe, safe. First 10 pages of their consumer confidence report brags about how safe it is, and they're just getting conflicting information from their regulatory agency, their state, their municipality, EPA, social media, their doctors, like with lead, for example, you have the action level for lead that's 15 parts per billion. Well, the American Academy of Pediatrics says, no, that 90th percentile level should be 1.
Yeah.
So there's all these different voices happening. So, it's all about just kind of saying, look, the choice is ultimately yours, right? I mean, when people are asking for safe or not safe, you can lay out all this complicated stuff that we're talking about, but ultimately it's up to the consumer. What is your risk tolerance? If you don't want lead in your water, and there's some lead in the water, we get this all the time with people in Washington, D.C. They're like, hey, we just got a lead report back from our municipality saying, hey, we got 4 parts per billion lead, and then they're saying that that's good, and my doctor is saying, no, it's not. Then they call us asking for it, and it's like, well, children and expecting parents even have different toxicity.
Right.
What's safe for a 36-year-old guy like me is different than what's safe for safe for someone, a mother who's carrying a child. Like that's the reality of it.
Right.
But EPA has to come up with a number, right? Like they just have to.
So I wonder, like when the states that set their own, that regulate their own drinking water, like who holds them accountable? Like
and that's Analies' way.
Who holds like states that like say California sets their own standards for everything, chromium-6, lead, arsenic, PFAS, you name it. Who holds the state of California accountable to those regulations?
So ultimately, the government, they just have to meet that, upper threshold. And then the Department of Environmental Quality or Department of Environmental Protection, whatever the state agency is, has jurisdiction over the standards.
Okay. That makes sense.
Enforcement as well?
Yeah.
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 Cool. This is
so much for simplifying it, right?
We really tried. Like we really tried to kind of break it down. So, if I were to like just make a paragraph of, I can't tell people what to be concerned about. Like we can't force that on people. Like what you should, does your water have fluoride in it? Don't drink it anymore. We can't say stuff like that. Like it's,
I wouldn't.
Right, exactly. So you're fine. But when it comes to things like, of course, different areas of the country have different concerns in their water. North Carolina's worried about Gen X and some other stuff, following this, unfortunately, this hurricane. Then we got stuff in California's worried about with lead. Arizona, jeez, really, lead and chromium-6. Just different parts of the country have different concerns about contaminants in their water. And so we are #local everywhere, right? And the way we do things is we tailor it to where you live. So what's something we can say? I don't know that there's a way to generalize it.
No, I mean, we can talk about how we treat this, right? I mean, we can control how we treat this.
Right.
So if someone calls in on to our phone number or chat or whatever, we ask them, what does your household look like? Are there young children? Because if there's young children, then it's a totally different ball game. Or, are you hoping to have children in the next however long?
Right.
So, I mean, if it's 2 adults beyond childbearing or they don't intend to have children, it's less of an issue, right? Whereas if, there's children that are in the house, like there shouldn't be any lead in the water. That's the reality of it. We know this.
Right.
So, I mean, that's kind of how we advise people, and we would probably make a lot more money if we were very inflammatory about it, but, we just try to lay it out. We have some studies that other research labs have done, the advisories that they give, and basically what we do at Hydroviv is we say, okay, we know the concentrations of the things in your water, we know what the EPA limits are, we kind of take those and throw them out the window because those are negotiated limits.
Right.
And then what we do is we look at the toxicological data. So some states have funded cancer like R&D to see what are these toxicological thresholds that you should be looking at. So we look at those. We look at the cancer literature saying, okay, this is the lifetime exposure. We have some people that can do risk assessments in-house, and it's just kind of, that's how we do it. And we just try and present the data
as best we can.
And really, it's ultimately up to the consumer to take this stuff into their own hands. So, I mean, that's really what we try and do is we just say, okay, we are credible as scientists, we're credible as policymakers. We're at least going to pull data from credible sources, not health gurus on the internet. And, we're actually going to look at those data and then kind of shape this, what does this look like for your situation? And all we can do is be honest with people, right?
And I think that's something that people aren't accustomed to.
Well, no, they're certainly not. We've turned away customers, people that called intending to buy, and then after talking with us, it's like, really, like, maybe it's not worth it.
Right.
So we've walked away. I know we've walked away from money on this. So, we try really hard to just be credible, and because ultimately. Yeah.
That's true. So I don't know if you're picking up on a theme by now, but over the last few broadcasts that you've seen us, at the end of the day, it kind of falls back on the consumer. Like, what do you believe is best for your household and for your family? We can provide information, we can provide guidance, but at the end of the day, it's what's best for you. Wow. So, safe. Clean.
Let's just can we all just agree, like, we just don't use the word clean, or like,
because clean is subjective.
Doesn't mean anything.
Like, yeah, everyone
can we make like a list of things that we don't say, like clean?
So clean
pure.
Clean is a fireable offense.
Right.
Right. Safe.
What are the other ones? What
So
are the other
it's like
marketing terms that don't mean
healthy.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah. And we could go even deeper than that, but I feel like
anytime you see that, just kind of don't really believe it. Like,
Don't continue reading.
So, wow, thank you so much, guys. Dr. Roy and Analies, for today. I hope we shared something with you that brought some insight, answered some questions. If you have any more questions, you're welcome to hit us up. hello@hydroviv.com, or you can visit the website, hydroviv.com, and click on our chat feature, and you will talk to a live person. I don't know if you've noticed, we have cameras, we have lights, we have computers, but we do not have robots.
Yeah, we don't have chatbots.
So you're going to actually talk to a live person who will answer any questions you have about water quality, what's going on in the water in your city, and how we can possibly help. Thank you guys again, and thank you for tuning into Water Nerds.